Hello and welcome to MF Corner. I'm Sumaira Abdi. On the show today, we're going to explore something that retail investors are often not explained very well, and that is structures which mutual funds invest in. SRE's Kirtan Shah will join in with insights. And also, we're going to restart a very popular section of answering queries which you, our viewers, send in. So joining in today to do just that will be Nikhil Kothari of Edica Wealth Management. So first up, retail investors have had a tough 2 years. We all know what went wrong: IL&FS, Zee, the SL Group, DHFL. Well, the list is long, but do we know exactly where the problem lay? It's not enough to say that, there was a default which led to a downward spiral. Yes, that's where it may have begun for most. But at the heart of it lay some very complex arrangements with mutual fund companies where the money that they lent could not be returned. So this arrangement, or structures as the savvy call it, still exists. So how can you spot them? Which one should trouble you? This is the reason I've invited SRE's Kirtan Shah to explain in the very simplest of language what you need to know. Kirtan, good afternoon. So what is this structure that investors need to know about? Is it a very big portion of what debt funds are investing in? And what are the top 3 or 4 things that investors need to focus on?
Hi, Sumaira. Thank you for having me on the show. So, Sumaira, what is it that a debt fund really does? So, if an investor is investing money in the debt fund will try and lend that money to institutions. How do debt funds make money? Those institutions will pay interest, which we popularly call as coupons. And also because these loans are listed and traded on the exchange, the fund may make a capital gains. That's how the fund actually tries generating returns. But apart from these plain vanilla lending or loans that the debt mutual funds would end up giving an institution, like you rightly said, there can be some structured loans or structured investments done by the debt MF specifically. Now, there are 4 major structures that the Indian mutual fund industry typically invests in. The first, popularly known as PTCs or securitization, that you actually saw happening in DHFL. Another is, which is not, the name is not very common, but people would know about it. So it's called the escrowing revenue account PTC, or some people also call it the cash revenue account. The third type of structure that you may generally see something called as loan against shares, which you actually saw happening in the SL Group or Zee. And the fourth type can be a corporate guarantee. So these are the 4 general structures you will see a debt mutual fund investing in or using to lend money to institutions, which are not very plain, simple, vanilla loans that the debt MF will give out to institutions.
So, Kirtan, let's start with the first of them, which is securitization, right? What is it and what does it do? And, why would a AMC or a mutual fund be interested in securitization?
So, Sumaira, securitization.
Okay, we'll just reconnect with Kirtan in a bit. So just to recap quickly, what he has told us is that there are 4 kinds of, structured arrangements that take place. One is securitization, there's escrowing revenue account, corporate guarantee, loan against shares. So first, let's talk about securitization. Kirtan, you were telling us, what does securitization bring to the table for a mutual fund?
So Sumaira, let's say, for example, an NBFC like DHFL, which is always going to be in constant need to raise new money. One of the reasons why I make this comment is the way the business operates. So as an NBFC, DHFL, I would take borrowings from the market, let's say a corporate deposit for 5 years, but I would lend that money to somebody who wants to take a loan for a housing for, let's say, 15, 20 years. So my borrowings are generally short end, which is 5 years, and my lending is 10, 15, 20 years. Now, I'm sure everybody will understand, because at the end of the 5th year, I need to return back money to people that I borrowed from. I will constantly be in need to raise more capital. Now, while I try and raise more capital, there are 2 general difficulties that I face as an NBFC. First difficulty may be that my credit rating is slightly lower, and hence when I'm trying to borrow from the market, the cost is slightly expensive. And second case, which happened in DHFL, probably people would not be willing to lend me. In both of these cases, what NBFCs and in particular DHFL that we are trying to talk about, what would they do is they would have already given out loans to somebody in the past for, let's say, a housing loan. So let's say they would have given out loans to you, me, and a lot of other people like that. So they will accumulate all of these individual loans that they would have given out in the past and try and make a bundle of it. Now, this bundle will be taken to a mutual fund, and the mutual fund is expected to invest in loan related instruments. So this entire bundle is taken to the mutual fund, and the mutual fund is asked for a price to invest in this. Now, how it works is very simple. Let's say, for example, the entire bundle put together of principal and the future interest to be received on this is 100 crore. That might be sold to an AMC at 90 crore, by which if AMC is investing in this, AMC will make 10 crores. This is the way how AMC pays money, 90 crore in our example, to DHFL, and DHFL gets this capital. How does it add value to the AMC? Now, if AMC has to buy a similar rated paper from the market, let's say, for example, it is AAA bundle that was sold to the AMC by DHFL, and if AMC would generally get 8%, through this structure that we are talking of, AMC can make 8.5%, 9%. So that is one very important reason why AMCs may look at investing in something like this. What also happens is all the future EMIs that are to be received from the client belongs to the AMC. So structure is designed in a way that those interest payments that come in are made available to the AMC in the form of coupons. Now, why would an AMC do something like this? Like I told you, they ideally end up making 0.5%, 1% more than they would have generally made had they invested in a AAA product otherwise. And also, a lot of these NBFCs keep something called as cash collateral. So let's say if the assets that the AMC bought is worth 100 crore, then on that 10%, let's say DHFL will keep some 10% or 10 crore worth of cash assets aside. So to a greater extent, AMC is protected up to 10% of downside, which is why it makes a lot of sense for the AMC to invest in. That is what securitization actually means.
Okay, in fact, Kirtan, this is a topic that we will need to explore again in the days to come, especially given that there is a moratorium underway. But let's talk about some more stuff. What is escrowing revenue account? I mean, it sounds really, really complex. Is it worth, an AMC's while to actually get into an arrangement like this?
So Sumaira, escrowing revenue account is actually a very simpler product, and I'll tell you why. So let's say, for example, when IL&FS got a contract to make the Jharkhand-Ranchi Expressway, the way it typically works is they have to move to the market, borrow money, and using that money, they have to build the expressway. So the first place where all of these infrastructure companies would go to borrow money is the bank. So bank would typically lend them money, but at a higher cost, is because the project is not made and the bank is not sure if they will be able to receive the money back. Now what happens is, after having taken money from the bank and the expressway been built, when IL&FS goes back to the bank saying, look, now the expressway is built, I'm going to start receiving toll as income, why don't you reduce my interest rate? Banks generally don't do it. So what then IL&FS does is approaches an AMC, tells the AMC that now the project is made or commissioned, like they call it. Why don't you refinance it? So AMCs will repay the entire loan that is outstanding with the bank, and IL&FS will get this loan from the AMC at a lower cost. Now, how is this done? Again, it is structured in a way where all the toll payments that are supposed to be received are going to be put together and through a structure, and that's how the AMC starts receiving those coupon payments like we generally call it. So this is actually what you call as an escrowing revenue account, PTC.
Okay, now corporate guarantee is pretty simple, right? I can imagine that if the person who has taken the loan is unable to pay repay the amount, then of course it's the person who has given the guarantee which needs to step up. But this loan against shares, and here as well, there has been a change in regulations, right? What was it? What is the current status? And what is the prevalence now within the mutual fund industry? Because I imagine that now, as the SEBI rules have become far more stringent, that there wouldn't be so many people willing to do less, right?
So Sumaira, again, to reflect back to a practical example, let's say a company like Edilink Infra, who wants to raise money and would reach out to an AMC, but an AMC would not want to lend to Edilink Infra for multiple reasons. One of them being the balance sheet size or balance sheet in itself may not be too strong. So what happens is a parent company or a subsidiary company, in this case Z, like we popularly know the entire SL case. So what Z would do is Z would say that I will keep some shares of mine as mortgage with you, AMC. And basis these shares that I've kept with you as mortgage, please lend money to one of my subsidiary company, which is Edilink Infra. And if Edilink is not able to pay back money, you are free to go out and sell my shares, by the way, to recover the loan that they've given. Now, in the past, what happened is before these SL things happened, there was actually no rule by SEBI of how much loan can be given out to if 100 crore worth of shares are kept as mortgage. Now, what has happened is our SEBI has come out with a rule saying that if 100 crore worth of shares are kept as mortgage, you can only lend 25 crore rupees. So it is 4 times the collateral money, or 4 times collateral will have to be kept for the money to be given out by the AMC to the individual entity who's trying to raise money. Because of which I think this is not a very logical situation or a logical space where corporates would want to keep 100 crore worth of loans as mortgage to raise 25 crore. And I think which is why we will see that LAS as a product will reduce and probably die down in the future.
Wow, those are pretty strong words, Kirtan. So already it's started coming off, right? The prevalence?
Yes. Yes, so we've seen LAS as a product not becoming too popular lately post SEBI's intervention and change in rule. And hence, any and everybody who wanted to do a LAS kind of a structure, they've all moved to doing something like the corporate guarantee structure.
All right, fair enough. But, as we have said so many times in the past that, mutual funds are in the business of investing and not in the business of lending. But we will come back and explore many of these topics over the coming days and weeks. Kirtan, for the moment, thanks very much for joining in. With that, we'll take a very quick break. On the other side, we're going to get down to answering the many queries that I've received over the last few days from you, our viewers. Joining in next will be Nikhil of Etica Wealth Management, and he'll answer some of the queries that you have sent us. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching MF Corner. Now, over the last few days, we've received a flood of queries on Twitter, and today we begin answering the first of those queries with the promise that whatever questions cannot be answered today will be taken up on Tuesday once again and answered then. So just keep them coming. Joining in today to do the honors is our old friend Nikhil Kothari of Etica Wealth Management, who joins in. Hi, Nikhil. Good to see you again after a very long time. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing. Yeah.
All right, good. So we have the first query, and all of these are queries that have come into us on Twitter, right? So the first one is Jitesh, who has written to us, and he wants to know if this is a good time to actually be looking at investing in thematic funds, or should he look at some index fund?
Okay. So, Sumaira, first of all, whenever we are creating a portfolio, we should have something called as a core portfolio and a satellite portfolio. Now, core portfolio should always be your diversified fund, or can be an index fund, because that will remain throughout the time frame. You just remain invested based on valuations of the market, and that will always be like a flavor, will not be flavor of the market, but that will be a long-term strategy. When it comes to satellite part of the portfolio, that's where you look at thematic fund. So again, thematic funds are good from a tactical asset allocation that, okay, today this sector looks good, so I don't mind putting some money there. So, but if the sector does good, I can make good money there. So, but again, it cannot be a major part of your portfolio. It can be maximum 10% of your portfolio. So keep your core portfolio as a diversified fund. On a satellite portfolio, you can look at something like a thematic fund. Now, in the current environment, you can look at multiple themes. You can look at, say, transport logistic fund. So one of the reasons that with the COVID thing, personal mobility will become a key thing. People like to have their own vehicles. Shared mobility may come down. Second thing is that in India, auto component, when we're seeing FDIs may come in. So one of the sector which India can benefit is auto and auto components. So that's where, again, transport logistic fund makes sense. So someone who's looking at thematic portfolio can look at, say, transport logistic fund, or can look at a PSU fund, because PSU has been beaten down quite a lot. And in last 5 years, they've underperformed quite heavily as compared to private limited companies in most of the cases. So in those thematic funds, one can look at, but again, that should be very, very satellite part of your portfolio. It should not be more than 10% of your portfolio. The most of the part of your portfolio should be like a active managed diversified fund, or can be an index fund, depending on your risk appetite and what category you're looking at.
Yeah, I totally take your point, because, for the longest time, my problem with thematic funds has been that, if you know that there is a good theme that's playing out, so do the fund managers of the large cap funds that you have in your main portfolio, right? So you'd have just too much of the same theme going on, and when the cycle turns, you'll be unable to actually exit it at the right time. Okay, next query comes in from Simi Nakwi. Now, this is an email that has come in. She's written to us from Lucknow. So she says that she's 27 years old. She's a professional. She describes her risk profile as aggressive and says that she has 6 lakh rupees which she can invest. She wants to look at direct mutual funds. And the other part of her question is that should the entire money go into direct mutual funds, or should she invest some part of it into investing in stocks?
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to answer that your profile can be aggressive, but again, your time frame has to match with the investment horizon. So basically, if you're looking at investment for 2 to 3 years, then you cannot invest in an equity type of oriented fund. You need to invest in a debt portfolio. But so when you're investing in equity, you need to have a slightly longer time frame. Now, coming to stocks as mutual fund, okay. Now, investing in stock or equity mutual fund, underlying the instrument remain the same, which is equities. Now, if market does good, both of your portfolio should ideally do good, and if market does bad, both will have impact. Now, when coming to stock portfolio, so you need to have a few things. One is that stock portfolio is always a concentrated portfolio, because you may have five stocks, 6 stocks in your portfolio, whereas in mutual fund you have like 30, 40 stocks. So it's far more diversified as compared to pure stock portfolio. So you are taking a concentration risk, which you need to be aware of it. Second, when you're investing in stocks, you need to have, first of all, knowledge in terms of which sector to buy, which stock to buy, what the company is doing, because there's a wide divergence between the same sector also. One company may be doing very good and one company may not be doing good, right? So you need to have a knowledge in terms of which stock to buy. You need to have time to understand and reevaluate stock every point of time, because you may have a journey where, I'll just give you an example, from 2008 to 2014, Reliance was more or less completely flat. There was no return on that stock. And from 2014 to 2020, we have seen that what exactly returns Reliance stock is given. So you may have to have a very long time frame when you're investing in a stock, and you need to keep on reevaluating that portfolio. So if you have knowledge, if you have time, and if you have bandwidth to evaluate all this stuff, then you can directly venture in stock picking. But if you don't have any one of them, if you don't have knowledge or if you don't have time, then I'll always say that stick to a professional fund manager, a mutual fund portfolio, because the fund manager does all this work for you at a very, very minimum cost. And just to give a disclaimer, my whole money is in mutual funds, right? So personally, I believe that if you don't have knowledge and time, then it's better to be in diversified portfolio, mutual fund portfolio. But if you want to take a concentration bet in terms of stocks to buy, and you have both knowledge and time, then you can venture into stocks.
All right, Nikhil, well said. Okay, there's a handle called iInvestor, which has written to us on Twitter. And this is a very interesting question, because it raises the point of whether all index funds are created equal, right? So he wants to know that if he wants to, is it a better idea to invest in the passive small cap index fund of Motilal Oswal, or should you go for an actively managed small cap fund?
Okay. So for the viewers, let me explain you what exactly active and what exactly passive means. So for passive, basically, you buy an index which is already defined. You know what our stocks are there, and you directly buy those exact same stocks in the same weightage. Whereas in active managed fund, the fund manager keeps on evaluating that which stocks can do better, and he will buy and sell stocks according to his understanding and his research. And so there's where the active fund manager, there's a fund manager risk. In passive, there's no fund manager risk. It's only a market risk. Now coming to say in a large cap segment, okay, in pure large cap, if you want to buy a large cap fund or a large cap index, I'll say you can still go and buy a large cap index, because in large cap the active alpha generation will not be that much as compared to index. Whereas in small cap, if you look at, there's a huge basket of stocks. Any stock which is beyond first 350 stocks is all small cap. So there's a huge tail of stocks which are available for a fund manager to buy. Okay. And second thing, if you look at small cap as a category, even the best performing fund and the worst performing fund, there's a huge difference in terms of alpha. So in small cap fund, there is a huge scope for active manager to generate alpha as compared to an index. So when you're looking at small cap as a segment or mid cap as a segment, active managed fund can play a better role as compared to a passive managed fund. So I'll say you need to do some amount of research in which fund to buy. Because as I told you, there's a huge difference between good performing fund and a bad performing fund. So you need to do good research on which fund to buy. But once you've got a good fund, the fund manager can generate sufficient alpha as compared to an index. So when coming to small cap and mid cap, it's better to be an active managed fund as compared to a passive managed fund. In case of pure large cap, you can still divide your portfolio in 50% index fund and 50% in active managed fund.
Thanks very much for advising our viewers, and we'll touch base with you again in a few days and with a few more queries. With that, we'll wrap up on MF Corner, but do stay tuned in. The market action continues with the team of Closing Bell.